Good morning, guys. Welcome to the podcast. And we are recording on Memorial Day in America. And I'm really happy to have Reuben on the show he's actually in the UK, and he is the founder and CEO of RJM Tax Exemption. He's going to talk to us how he services clients, his business, and it's all about taxes. And really happy to have him on for this sponsored episode. Reuben, welcome.
Hi, Chris. Great to be here.
Yeah. And briefly introduce yourself, talk about your journey, your background, then we'll get into the meat of the conversation.
Yeah, of course. I guess my journey isn't the most conventional of journeys, Chris. So I started off actually as a physical therapist was my first degree. So I have some history in the medical industry like yourself. And yeah, after that, I actually became a science teacher for a while and then a tutor and then an examiner, specialized in biology. But then after a while, I wanted to do something different. I wanted to start my own business. So I started my own Amazon store online and particularly selling in the US because that's where all of the kind of traffic and money and business was. And in doing that and starting my own business and selling products there, I ended up starting my business, as you mentioned today, RJM Tax Exemption, which ultimately helps people like I was 6, 7 years ago who were just starting their journey into e-commerce and were very unfamiliar with all of the sales tax laws, all of those hurdles of being tax exempt, so you don't pay sales tax when you purchase products for resale, but also that you're just compliant in general, and also a little bit on how to transition over if you're not US based and you want to sell in America, because that's quite a big
Mm.
step for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, interesting. And we'll dive into the meat of the conversation. And one thing is talking about is who's your ideal client who comes to work with you? Is it digital nomads? Is it Fortune 500? Is it businesses in the US, Canada, Europe, Asia? Who works with you?
Basically, anybody who wants to sell products online in the US, Chris. So we work with clients of all different sizes. So you just need to really be selling and wanting to build a business online, be selling into the US.
Okay, excellent. And what is the number one question, or what are the top like three questions they have when somebody's interested in gaining a foothold in the US? What should they be? What are they asking you? What are they frustrated? What do they want? What are they sick and tired of to come and work with you?
Yeah, I think people often, if they haven't started yet but are wanting to, they want to know the upfront costs. How costly is it going to be to set up a business initially to get started? And then what are the your tax implications that are going to come with starting a business? Even more so if you're not based in the US, but you have a super successful business, say in Europe or elsewhere, and you want to move to the US, you'll want to know again what are going to be the tax implications of that. So those are probably the two biggest things that come up. And we often have a very easy and simple solution for those, of course.
Mhm. Excellent. Talk about the like if you don't know what you're doing, and let's say for example a lot of people listening or watching the podcast, they're high income, and usually or a lot of them are like do it yourself, and they're like, yeah, I don't need advice. What are the potential consequences of not getting proper advice in terms of either you're paying more than you need to, or the authorities are going to come after you, the rules and regulations, etc.
Yeah, all of that, Chris. I'm sure people are probably already aware of that. I don't think I need to get out a big stick and start beating people over the head and say, but yeah, you've listed them. The typical ones, as you expect, authorities will put liens on your bank accounts, freeze things, freeze assets, do all sorts. They'll mess up your credit rating, they'll shut your business down. All of the worst case scenarios, we've of course seen them from our point of view where we're sitting. Typically, it starts with milder things than that, and it gives people a chance before they end up in prison. It's not as dramatic as the movies make out, but it can be if people ignore them. And obviously, if you become a really successful business quite quickly and do quite high volumes, then you're going to be more liable for bigger penalties and fines and issues if you don't set up correctly at the beginning.
Yeah. So next question I have for you is what is for someone listening and they're like, okay, yeah, I have a e-com business. The first step that they should be doing in terms of being compliant?
Yeah, first step would be to try and just educate yourself a little bit. That's what I did back in the day when I started my store, and that's what led me into this business. Go online on our website. We have some great blogs and articles. There's lots elsewhere on other sites, so get a bit of information And then ideally, you want to work with a business like ourselves who will just do a free assessment and audit for you and check your liabilities and let you know without you having to pay a penny or do anything. We can tell you what the situation is. But the first steps really are starting to learn about the nexus laws and rules across all the different states. And what does that mean for your business? Like, when are you going to cross those thresholds? What are those thresholds? What are the different things you can do as a business which trigger those thresholds, which can be a physical thing or a non-physical thing? That's what you want to start to wrap your head around. And also a little bit on how the differences between marketplace facilitators like selling on Amazon will compare to just selling on your own website or on a different platform as well.
Interesting. Talk about how a business can achieve sales tax exemption.
Okay, yeah. So it shouldn't be really that complicated for a business. Really, you want to look at the supplier you're getting your products from. Let's assume you're getting them from within the US because you're not wanting to import them in now elsewhere because of the tariffs that are crazy. So you want to get some products within the US to resell. When you're buying from a wholesaler or maybe even a retailer because you've got a good kind of margin to work with, you think you can sell those products for a higher price, you want to basically just check that retailer or wholesaler aren't charging you sales tax when you buy those products. Because as a business that's reselling products, you're not liable to have to pay sales tax. It should be the end user who is purchasing the product off you who will pay the sales tax according to whether you need to be charging it, but you shouldn't have to. So really, you just need to get the right resale certificates. So that would be just the case of registering to the right state to get the right sales tax ID, to create the right resale certificate, to give to the suppliers so they can verify it and say, great, we don't have to charge you sales tax. And that will obviously boost your margins massively as a business if you miss that. And that's actually how we started, as hence our name, tax exemption, RJM, because a lot of people were doing drop shipping back in the day, wanting to just buy from a retailer and ship it straight to the end user. But the retailers were going to charge them sales tax unless they gave them the right resale certificate. So when they did that, massive boost in margin, we made clients money back very quickly on any price they would have paid for our services. And we still offer that. And it's probably more popular now with maybe print on demand services, like you see with Gelato, where people can just sell a product before they've even got the product, maybe on their website. And once it's already paid for, they go to Gelato, print their brand onto a mug or whatever they've done, and just ship it straight to the client. And that's a really great model if you can make that work and you have a branding or an influence which is strong enough to get those products off the shelf.
Yeah. The next question I have for you is because you have Walmart, you have Amazon, I believe Shopify. Shopify is Canada, I believe. Or if you have, for example, like Alibaba, how do you if different listeners or viewers are using these different platforms, how does the sales tax process, registration, exemption process, is it different or is it pretty much just streamlined the same?
It's wildly different from retailer to retailer, and you've hit on something quite interesting there, Chris, because I guess people think when we're talking about business in Amazon or these places, we're talking about you selling on them, but people also do buy products off Amazon or off Walmart to sell onwards. And those retailers will basically decide which states they want to have resale certificates from for you to not be charged sales tax when you buy them. So obviously, where the address you're shipping the product to, say California, that will determine the state tax and the sales tax, should I say, of that state that they're going to charge you. So yeah, it's different. It's very different. Often you're looking at around 10 different states that they'll be asking to be fully exempt so you can ship to every single state and not be charged any sales tax. But yeah, it's a weird one. Like some retailers will say we want a certificate in every single state that you ship to. And then you
Wow.
have to obviously work out, is that worth your while to register to all those states and maintain all of those accounts and keep them open to have a tax exemption for your margins? And people will obviously try and pick the retailers where it's a little bit easier to get tax exempt to use if they're going to go down that path.
Yeah, because I remember back in the day, like Amazon, there was like no sales tax, and it was like awesome. It was like better than you save yourself. Like here in Texas, you save yourself 8.25%. That's
Yeah.
significant if you're. But the
Yeah.
other thing you talked about was just talking about minimums. And so, is it worth your while? Like, for example, what are the minimum e-commerce income and sales tax and IRS rules? At which point, like, how big a business should be before they should? Obviously, if you're doing like less than, I'd say, I'm just less than 10,000 in sales a year, do you need to go through all of this, or is it like, talk about that?
Yeah, so I think what you're alluding to there, Chris, more clearly is economic nexus as a law, because that is depending very much on the volume of sales you do, which can either be the volume in just dollars per year, the last 12 months of your business, or it can be the volume of number of units. So that will again vary vastly from state to state. You have some states where you can literally just sell 200 products to that state in a year and you cross the threshold. Others, it's way more. Some it's $100,000. Some it's 500,000. I think the thing which you need to be more careful about is actually physical nexus. So most states, if you store a product at all in a warehouse within their state, then they class you as having physical nexus and needing to collect sales tax straight away, no matter what volume. So it's probably the physical nexus which is harder and trickier to track, which we obviously do as a company. We have software to do that. But if say you're an Amazon FBA seller as well, people get confused and think if I sell on Amazon, they cover all of the sales tax issues now, which they do and they've got better at. But they don't actually cover all of your liability. So we work directly with the states and we call them regularly and speak to them. And the last time we had a full call around with all of the states, which was fairly recent and within the last month, there was actually still around 11 states still saying, even though Amazon collect and remit the sales tax for the seller on Amazon now, we still want people to be registered to us, to have an account with us, and to file like a gross filing to let us know how much you've sold into our state and then claim a deduction. So you don't have actually pay sales tax, but you're letting us know that it's matching with, say, what Amazon is saying, or you're keeping a record of it. So that is one which people miss all the time. And that's, again, you've got to be careful of your liabilities. The same as a Walmart seller, if it's fulfilled by Walmart and you have products in Walmart warehouses, that's what triggers you the most. So I would say you need to keep more of a careful eye on that really than the thresholds themselves, because they're often a lot bigger, take a
Wow.
lot longer to cross.
Interesting. And the other question I have for you is this idea of, because 50 states and all these regulations, how do you keep abreast of all the changing laws in your team and staff? Do you use artificial intelligence, or just, is it like, do they have a law degree? Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of everything of what you've mentioned there, but our really go-to over the years, as mentioned, is reaching out and speaking to these states. And the reason being because the information on their websites can sometimes not be clear, they can be not updated, it cannot be super straightforward. So if we've spoken to someone and they have given us a guarantee per se and they've backed it up with, say, a document, that has been our kind of best approach in the past in speaking to them. And I think that's why people get a bit confused as well when they go to lots of different firms and lots of different companies and get lots of different opinions and advice. I think it's probably because they've not spoken to the states and they've just assumed with the information and knowledge they have, maybe that AI is given them or someone's given them, we shouldn't be registered. And then you call the state and they're like, hey, actually, we want you to be registered. Yeah, I think that's the best way to actually speak to them. Yeah.
Yeah. The next question I have for you is, obviously, because you talked about deductions, and is it possible to avoid paying the IRS? Again, this is not legal advice and we're just conjecturing, but is it possible to avoid paying the IRS even if you're doing like significant amounts? Are there deductions? Is the way your entity is structured? How do you avoid paying the IRS, and or how does the IRS track e-commerce income even if it's not reported?
Yeah, of course, you can always do deductions. We again, it's probably quite typical that people are aware of that. There's always tools out there
Yeah.
to help people with that. As far as tracking goes, again, a bit of a misconception. People think if I'm just selling online, I've got not got much of a presence and people aren't going to find out. But the IRS have all sorts, and the states, even at a state level, they can track the volume of sales by the platform you're selling on, so they can communicate directly with marketplace facilitators, which they do. They can communicate with payment processors like Stripe. The states are allowed to demand information off them. But bizarrely, even fulfillment centers and shipping companies, again, they can demand information like who is shipping these, what volume is being shipped here, where is it being shipped from. Yeah, there's actually a lot of ways to be caught out, probably more than people are aware of. Yeah.
Yeah, because what's interesting is you have a interesting article is like how foreign owners of U.S. LLCs can avoid paying U.S. income tax. So talk about that.
Yeah, that's very much for your listeners who aren't based in the US. And if they're looking to sell in the US and say they already have a successful product on Amazon UK or Amazon Italy or Amazon France or wherever, that's the scary thing for those people is will I pay double taxation? Will I end up doing that? So we have articles, as you've just said, on our website, which help inform people of the information behind that. And what it's talking about in that one is the whole concept of permanent establishment. So if as a business you can not have a permanent establishment as a business in the US, then the tax treaty between your country and the US will often cover you. So you don't have to pay tax to the US as well as your own home country. So again, that's one of the most important things to look at before you set up shop. What's going to trigger permanent establishment? Does my tax treaty cover that? For the most part, it will with most countries. Like, what does that mean? Should I not have employees in the US? Should I not have people signing contracts there? Should I not have an office? Yeah, there's lots of ways you've got to cover yourself if you don't want to tick that box of permanent establishment. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question I have for you is because you talked about fulfillment by Amazon and fulfillment by the merchant. Obviously, at the checkout, there's the addition of the sales tax. But what about, for example, like print on demand or like a lot of drop shippers who are just getting the cut of the what you bought for what you sold? Who pays the sales tax there?
Yeah, so if you're set up correctly as a business and you're buying your products from a print on demand company, you shouldn't have to pay sales tax. So again, we would set you up to save a lot of money that way. But
Yeah.
then when you sell your products to the customers, ship it straight from, say, a print on demand company to the customer, it's your responsibility to track the volume in which you're selling those and when you cross those thresholds. And if there's any other taxes, because for the most part, there's a few other little ones that can catch people out. Franchise tax within Texas, even if you sell any products, they want you to register. There's B and O tax with Washington. Again, they typically want you to register just straight off the bat. So there are a few little ones, but besides that, it will be you tracking your thresholds as you sell into those states. And then if you sell through a payment processor, then hopefully they can put the settings correctly when you cross those. So then you will start charging sales tax only to that state if that person is based in that state when they buy a product off you. And Shopify is really good at that as well. If your website is based on Shopify, they have a good system to set that up to do that for you.
Yeah, interesting. And yeah, because you talked about franchise tax in sounds like certain states, such as, for example, California, Texas. I know Texas, you have one. And then, so again, this is the other question I have for you is how do you, with the amount of just money laundering and like, how do you sniff out whether, like, when businesses come to talk to you, whether they're trying to launder money or just hide their money? Talk about how you do your due diligence with those types of clients.
Very interesting question. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious for the most part if that is the case because people will not want to answer questions or they won't want to do what you're telling them to. Thankfully, the liability is with them at the end of the day in these scenarios. But I do obviously coming from the UK, I do class myself as a bit of a Sherlock Holmes of an inspector and just trust my gut, Chris. Obviously, we can tell from the land of Sherlock Holmes when there's something up, obviously. But no, in all seriousness, yeah, it's just the obvious red flags, like I say, people not being willing to answer questions, not show your books, not show books to you, should I say, not information, dodging certain questions, all of that kind of stuff. Looking very red and sweaty when you have a Zoom conversation with them about what they've been up to. But yeah, thankfully, it's not my full-time job. It's just a hobby, being an inspector on the side, so it's fine.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting because with e-commerce, anybody can now it's very easy to spin up just and just say, oh, I do this, and then you're like laundering money or scams and all that. People are pretty creative these days.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll leave that to the IRS to
yeah,
find out. I'll leave that to them. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, so very how can people contact you and find out more about you and if they're really interested in work with you?
Yeah, so our website, as you mentioned, RJM Tax Exemption.com. All of the information about us as a business is on there. You'll see our Trustpilot reviews. We're ranked #1 in the US on Trustpilot at the moment for tax preparation, and company registry. So you can check us out and see what other people are saying about us. You can book a free sales tax consultation or sales tax nexus assessment on our website as well without having to pay a penny. And you can reach out to us on support@ rjmtaxexemption.com if you just want a good old fashioned email conversation. But we'll be here and we'll be ready to help.
Excellent. Thanks so much for coming on, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Pleasure. Thanks so much, Chris. You take care.